You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, my name is Anthony Leveritz, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And along with my producer, Jason Cardona, we had the great experience today of having Amy Van Dyken join us. Amy Van Dyken, six-time Olympic gold medalist as a swimmer and all-around great human being. We dive into a whole bunch of different topics, but really get into the fact that she was paralyzed in 2014 from an unfortunate ATV accident and didn't choose to lose the ability to walk, had to wake up one day and realize that that was gone, and really had a great conversation with her. Appreciate her coming on. Hope you enjoy it. Amy, welcome to the show. I will have properly introduced you before before this comes on. But how do you? Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And second, how do you introduce yourself to people? For those people who know who you are, but many people who maybe don't know who you are, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, it would depend on the setting, but in this setting, I would say my name is Amy Van Dyken. I'm a six-time Olympic gold medalist in swimming, first American woman to win 4 golds in 1 Olympics. It's only been tied, never broken. And I am now a T11 paraplegic.
Wow. So there's so much to cover with you here today. Let's start, as you know, our series is trying to help young athletes, parents, coaches, kind of on this journey through getting involved in sports as a young age. This I don't know if cesspool is the right way to describe it, but what has happened in youth sports is why we're trying to have an impact on the people that are listening to this. How old were you when you first got involved in athletics? And was it only swimming, or did you get involved in everything as a young person?
I did everything as a kid. You have to remember, I am a severe asthmatic. And so we were just trying to find something that I could do. I tried soccer. I was outside too much, the grass. I was too allergic to it. I went so far as to do gymnastics. I'm 6 feet tall. That was not going to work out. So yeah, I tried everything. And swimming was the one thing where I immediately found what I loved, and I was not good at it. I mean, like, let's just clear that up. It took me 6 years to finish 25 yards of the pool, but I was there with my friends. I went to practice. I bought the Speedo. I was doing the cheers. So I knew that it was my place. I just didn't know how far it was going to take me in life.
How old were you when you found swimming, or it found you, or whatever that was? How old were you when you first got in the pool?
Oh my gosh, I was a young kid. We had a pool in our neighborhood when I was growing up. Mom got me into the pool right away, wanted me to learn how to swim just for basic life safety stuff.
Yeah.
But I loved the water. I felt at home in the water, and summer was my favorite time of the year because I knew that I would be able to go swimming. But I didn't get involved into swimming as a sport until I was 6 years old.
So 6, you started swimming. Yeah. And you're saying you were bad at 6? What 6-year-old is good at anything other than coloring chickens?
You know what? And that's a great question. And so now maybe you have ruined my speech. So why don't we just keep it between us so I can still go out and make some money? But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, what 6-year-old is good at anything, right? But like, I was that kid that you watch and you go, oh my gosh, does this child have any athletic ability whatsoever? So like, I would do a belly flop. I'd take a couple strokes, I'd hang on the lane line, start calling for mom, they'd pull me out of the water. And, we kept doing it. And my parents kept bringing me to swim meets. Why? I have no idea. I think they like the social aspect of it. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, it's like I finished my first length of the pool. I felt I was destined for greatness. I told my parents, and they were like, would you shh? Someone's going to hear you talk like this. And the next year, I won my first blue ribbon, and I was hooked. I was addicted to winning.
Yeah. So that process of going from starting out not doing anything, in the pool, and feeling out of place and not know what was that? What did you learn from that as you're kind of going through this journey of each step of the way? Did that help you each step of the way, being able to pull from, I used to suck at this, now I'm not sucking at this anymore, I'm going to try something new? Did that help you along the way?
I think it did. And I think that it was like an early goal setting type of thing, even at that young age. I'm a big believer in visualization, goal setting. I do it in my life today. But I think that was the start of it, right? Was like, oh my gosh, I finished my first length of the pool. So of course, the next step would be to win the race.
Right.
And I think that's what it taught me. But it also taught me that you have that in your mind and that's what you're working for. And some days you're going to get really close to it. And some days you are going to be so far away from it that you can't even see through the trees. But it teaches you, I think it taught me, and I guess it does teach you how to progressively get better, not take those backward steps so hard, and to really learn about yourself. And I think I was doing that at a really young age, which is kind of crazy because
Well, it's an amazing. I've been blessed to coach really great athletes, to be able to talk to many great athletes, and that it's a common theme, right? That learning how to fail and get up from it and go again, knowing you might fail again is one of those things that it's hard to replicate that in other places of your life, and athletics gives us an opportunity to do that.
yeah, it does. And I think it's so important because you can't go through life, even though your mom tells you you're the best at something, you can't go through life thinking you're the best at everything right away. You have to know that there is a learning curve. And I think the younger that you learn that, I think the better. And I tell kids this, and I think it's hard for them to believe until you can look back. But I learned way more about myself from losing than I ever
Mm.
did from winning. Winning is easy, right? Winning, oh, you won, and now everyone's going to take care of you and coddle you and baby you. And what can I do for you?
You're a
But when you
star.
lose, yes, you're a star. You're on the Wheaties box. Smile, right? Like it's just stupid. But when you lose, you learn humility and you learn how
Mm.
to see someone else succeed, be envious of that and want that for yourself, but still be able to applaud their winnings, you know? So I
Yeah.
think it was something that I learned early on, and I'm really grateful for that. And I do believe the only place to do that is sports. Can't
Yeah.
really do it in school. You got to do it in sports.
Yeah, it should be a safe place to be able to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So you obviously you become an Olympian, not just an Olympian, you become a Hall of Famer, Olympic gold medal, all the things, right? All the accolades at the highest level. That doesn't just happen. So somewhere along the way, you realized that you had some talent here. You went from saying I'm not good to figuring out you had some talent. How old were you when that happened? That shift in your brain of I suck to you know what? I could be pretty darn good. Like realistically, I've got some skill here.
I think it was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And that's when I started, breaking the state records in my events. And I was like, man, I might have a career in this. And then when I was a senior in high school, I qualified for the 92 Olympic trials. And so that's when I thought, wow, this could actually really happen. All of those years of me watching Janet Evans and Matt Biondi do their thing and me thinking, I'm almost Janet's age. We could do the same thing, to her and I becoming teammates. It started kind of having some fruition. And then I got some validation when I was able to get a scholarship to go to college, which was amazing. And I started seeing swimming as my way through life.
Mm.
I didn't have the easiest time in school, dyslexic, ADHD, you can only imagine, hot
Yeah.
mess express. And I didn't have the easiest time, but sport was where I really fit in. And it was my way to get into college. It was my way to get past college. And it was my way to do things. It's kind of how I started feeling once I got that scholarship. Like, this is your job. You've got to take it seriously. And I think that that's what sport does as well, is it teaches you those valuable lessons that you can really only learn through trial and error, but you have a safe place to do it with your team, your friends, your coach. And that stays within its own little community. It rarely
Right.
goes outside. So you're safe in there, which I think
Yeah.
is the best thing ever.
Yeah. So I want to drill down on this a little bit. So you're junior in high school, things are happening for you in the pool, but
Yeah.
obviously you're talented, right? Your body, physically, you can't be what you've become without having some physical talent. But there's lots of physically talented people out there. What was that sacrifice for you? What was that process like before that first one? Oh, I won. I'm a stud. I'm really good. There had to be that process. How much time, effort, energy, sacrifice did you have to put into that as a freshman, sophomore, leading to that junior year, figuring that part out?
Well, it was a lot. I mean, I would miss class to go to swim meets. And so, here I am already struggling in school and it being pulled out and, having to make things up. And when you're ADHD, you're like cuckoo and, you squirrel and you forget things. And so then your grades go down. And if you're not there present, you suffer. But the rest of it was just magical. It really was being able to travel, being able to make friendships with not just your teammates, but other teams, coaches who are older than you. And I think that's so important, especially today, because back in the day when you wanted to go out and play with Mary, you had to call Mary's parents and be like, "Hi, Mr. Smith. This is Amy. Can Mary come out and play?" We don't do that anymore. So you talk to your coaches and your teachers, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just I forgot what I was answering. ADHD, but oh, the sacrifice. There was a lot of there was a lot of sacrifice, in the fact that I was being taken out of school. And then I was traveling. And then it got to the point where, well, you can't go to homecoming and you can't go to prom because you've got practice the next morning and you're going to have to make a decision. Like, do you want to be this girl or do you want to be this girl? And you have to make that decision. And so to make those decisions, at the time, it didn't feel early on in my life. And now I look back and I go, gosh, those are some tough decisions to make when you're 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I made those decisions. And I think that's important, like, again, for kids to be able to make decisions like that for themselves and to be able to stick with it, to live through the consequences, either good or bad.
Yeah. So swimming, were you getting up super early in the morning to get in the pool? And I think this is so important because every parent out there, we see our kid through rose-colored glasses, and we believe they're going to be the next Amy Van Dyken, the next Tom Brady, the next whatever sport that they're in, right? And but there is a process to get to that level. Talk about your training regimen that you went through to get to kind of become a college recruitable athlete.
So we'll talk high school. I really didn't do a lot of morning training outside of high school swimming. So high school swimming, yes, we would be in the pool for an hour and a half before school. Then we would go to school, and then afterwards we would be in the pool again for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So high school wasn't really that big of a deal. College is where it really smacks you in the face, and that's when you are every day. You are in the pool at 6 a.m. Then you are in the weight room for another hour, hour and a half, and then you've got to go to class, and then you got to come back again and swim again, and at night. And it's a lot. You give up a lot, but you also get a lot. I had more fun in college than I think anybody could have without being in a sorority fraternity because I had my own built in.
Yeah.
So I will say it is a lot of sacrifice. It truly is. And when you're a kid, sometimes you don't really understand it. But I will say it was worth it to me. Now you can look back and go, well, yeah, you won 6 gold medals. You're an idiot. Of course, it was fun for you. But also, I look at my teammates that didn't make it to Olympic trials that I swam with at the University of Arizona or Colorado State. And they had the best time too. So it wasn't all about winning. It was about that team atmosphere and about, having a built-in family right from the jump.
So you mentioned getting in the weight room. So how old were you when you started that, and how important was that for you into starting to see some changes in your times, your performance? What was that sort of? Was there an aha moment, a light bulb moment for you when you started doing other things besides swimming that allowed you to be better at swimming?
Yeah, so I'm a sprinter and a butterflyer. So we were in the weight room a lot. You want that speed, that power, that right now. And so, but I didn't get into the weight room until I went to the University of Arizona.
Mm,
And I found a weight and I fell in love.
yeah.
I didn't know what it was about the weights, but I just loved lifting. And then I started seeing my times get faster. I mean, my freshman year, I was already an All-American at NCAA's, which was pretty cool. And I started seeing that the more that I would work on my power in the weight room, the more it would transfer into the pool, to the point where when I got to the Olympic Training Center in 1994 and was training with John T. Skinner, he would tell me his story. He's like, I had this one girl one time and she wasn't swimming so fast in the pool and I had to pull her out of the weight room. Well, that story was about me. And
Mm,
he was telling me to get out of the weight room. So there is that point where it is really good for you, but then you can push it too far, become too muscular where you don't have the flexibility that you needed. And you're working too hard at that, and not hard enough on your starts, your turns, your finishes, the things that I harp on when I am calling swim meets. Of course,
yeah,
it's the stuff I needed to work on, right?
yeah.
So there is that balance. But I found it when I became a freshman in college, and I will tell you what, my happy place is the weight room, and it still is.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point too, and the science has gotten so much better than since when we were. You're younger than me, but since we were kids, but the idea that it's not just strength, right? You talked about flexibility and movement and functional movement, and being having all the other receptor muscles to be able to handle the weights that you're lifting. Like those are critical things for young kids to be able to start working on at a young age. If you could have gone back and done anything at that time, would you have done anything different with your training as a younger person, or were you okay with finding weights when you found it?
I'm glad that I found weights when I found it.
Yeah,
Because, again, when we went earlier in our conversation, I was saying that I started specifically swimming at a pretty young age,
yeah,
didn't do anything else. And I am a firm believer that that's not good for a kid.
yeah.
I think you have to try everything, do everything. Okay. So I'm already behind the eight ball when it when it
Can
comes
you
to that.
repeat that? Because this is critical, I think, for parents. Like I think
Yeah.
this is an Olympic gold medalist telling you, yes, I had a great career, but I also believe it's really, really important that there's multidimensional athletes. Can you please just say that one more time for me?
Yeah. When you're a kid, you should not be spending your entire focus of life and sport on one sport.
Yeah.
Think about this,
Yeah.
okay? Think about how many people are older. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I had two shoulder surgeries that were supposed to end my career from overuse.
Hmm.
I didn't start swimming seriously until I was in college. And yet, you want a child to all day, every day think football, baseball, basketball, swimming. That's all they think about. And that's the only thing they do. You're going to have overuse injuries by the time they're in high school. I don't believe in it. I believe that children really need to try everything, not only to see what they're good at, to see what they like. Because it doesn't necessarily matter what they're good at if they don't like it. But also that overuse in children, we're seeing it all the time
Yeah.
now. I spend a lot of time in hospital, which, sorry, when you're a paraplegic, that's what happens. And I see these overuse injuries, and I look at the child, and they're not even in high school yet,
Yeah.
and their career is done.
Yeah.
So, parents, if you get one thing out of this, let your kids do everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's it's
Goodbye.
it's I am a huge believer in that, and everybody that I've talked to is on the same page with this, and it's just such a money grab, right? In this club sport that we have now in our world, that if you got to be involved in my club year round, and it's all about the money for that person, not the development of the young person, and I think the overuse thing, especially in women. So I coached women's
Yeah.
basketball for 8 years, and ACL tears in basketball and soccer are huge, right? And a big part of that comes from the same training over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And back to the other, the point that we talked about a little bit earlier. If you only do one thing and you're great at it all the time, you never really fail. And
Right.
if being bad at another sport is so good for that process of learning how to fail in that safe environment. And if you're just being great at one thing all the time, you're not going to be able to experience that.
Right. And you need to experience that in that safe place, right? That we were
Yeah.
talking about, that
Yeah.
team. If you go outside and you learn it all of a sudden when you're, 25 and you got fired from your first job, that's a tough time to learn that,
Yeah.
and also when we're talking about, getting specifically into one sport and you're talking about a money grab, let me tell you about a money grab is some of these coaches who are taking your money to get that kid to be really good at something. And I'm going to use an example. There's a lot of these kicking camps out there, right? For kids that are kickers, punters, whatever. My husband was a punter in the NFL for 14, 15 years. He watches kids now in the NFL and goes, who is teaching this? That is not how you do this at all. Like, you are setting yourself up for failure if it's windy, cold, blah, blah. So you're paying money to people who don't know what they're doing.
That's right.
research and think
Do
about
your
it.
homework, parent. Find
Thank
out
you.
if they know what they're doing and it's in the best interest of your child. There's
Yes.
and it's hard to find that research sometimes, but take more time. I think the message is take more time doing research than just throwing them in. Like you'd be better off in the long run if you took more time to find the right fit than just getting them involved.
Exactly. Yep. Preach it.
Okay, we're preaching. So, all right. So you get done with college, and when was your first Olympic trials?
First Olympic trials was 1992.
92, and
Yeah.
didn't qualify that year for the Olympics, correct? Did you feel like that was a failure for you, or where were you in that process for you? Was it devastating? I've done all this work and I think I can be an Olympian and not make it, or what kind of how did that experience go for you?
No, gosh, I mean, it's so tough because when I went there to the Olympic trials, I swam 2 events. Both events I ended up winning in 96. Didn't make the team. I'm telling you, never give up, people. Never give up.
Yeah.
And I went through all the feelings that you have, the anger, the sadness, the what am I doing here, and the things you need to process. And then I thought about it and I go, you know what? Wait, if I went to Barcelona and swam one length of the pool, and I started like as I'm warming down, staring at the black line forever, going through my mind how much money that was per second, it made me want to vomit. So I went up to my parents and I was like, you know what? We didn't make it this time. I'm going to go to 96 and I'm going to swim more than just one lap. And at that point, my parents were like, you know what? She may be onto something here.
Yeah.
Because whatever she wants to do, she does. And I do believe that visualization is a huge part of that. But yeah, I knew that I was going to make it in 96 in more than one event, and I was going to do whatever it took to get there. Meaning I left college a year early, went to the Olympic Training Center, and that's what I did because that was my goal. And I knew at that point, like it was either, pun intended, sink or swim. And, like you're leaving college early, you better get your stuff together and you better make this Olympic team.
And you did. So we're going to talk about the Olympics in a minute. They're just such an amazing experience. But you've brought up visualization a couple of times, and it's something we haven't talked about on this podcast yet. And talk through what that means for you, and sort of how you went about. How'd you learn about it? What did you do with it? And then what was the outcome that you saw that it helped you with?
So my dad was he was a pitcher in high school. And he said that he would visualize some of his pitches. He's like, why don't you just start doing that? And so when I first started, I'd like, oh yeah, picture my race. Okay, it's over. Then it got to the point where I got really serious about it. And there was a record I wanted to break. It was an American record. And the American record in the 50 free was 21.9. So I wanted to go 21.7. I wanted to break it, not just break it. I wanted to break it. And so I had Post-it notes all over my college room, everywhere. 21.7, 21.7. Before I went to bed, I would close my eyes, and the first race, I would picture everything going wrong. I missed my turn, I false started, whatever could go wrong. And then I would visualize me swimming the perfect race with the perfect time, 21.7. I would picture what it smelled like, tasted like, sounded like, everything. And when you do this in your mind, it gets to the point where your mind doesn't know if you've actually done it or if you're just thinking about it. Well, I went to NCAA's and I broke the American record, and my time was 21.77.
Wow. How cool was that?
It was so cool. And I've done it my entire career, and I can pretty much guess what time I will go, within a couple of hundredths to tenths of a second. And I do it all the time. I do it for everything. If I've got a big meeting, I visualize the meeting, me dropping F-bomb after F-bomb and telling the guy that he's a nothing and a that. And then I go into him asking the perfect questions and me giving the perfect answers. I still do it to this day. So I really am a big proponent of it. And I really think that if you can use it and harness it, it really is one of these untapped things that athletes really are kind of getting into. And I think if they used it more and in the right way and a little better, maybe you could end up with that mansion and that hot husband. I mean, maybe you could, end up going to the games or becoming a Cy Young winner. Like, who knows?
Well, you're killing it today. So you must have visualized before you came on the podcast today. So
Always.
how long do you're talk to a young student athlete, you know, anywhere between in that middle school to high school range that wants to, you know, serious about their sport. How long should they spend on that on a daily basis? Do they do that before practice, before games, before they go to bed at night? What's the time frame of being able to put themselves in that moment to visualize that stuff?
So I don't think that there's a time, right? I think that it's when you can have the space to really do it. And I mean to really do it. So if it's when you're in practice, if it's when you're in warm up, if it's when you're getting dressed out to go out to practice, wherever it is. For me, it was right before I went to sleep. That's the only time I could find my mind to be quiet.
Mm.
Again, ADHD. And so that was it. And I could, and I don't really, when I think back, I never had a time limit to it. Like I never said, I'm going to visualize for 5 minutes and that's it. I would visualize until I got my mind and my body to that 21/7.
Mm.
So whatever it took, you know, the false start, I would still go 21/7. So, you know, it's just, and when I tell you that I'm doing this, it's so that no matter what happens in that race or that game or whatever, you've already been through it. You know how to deal with it. So that's why I say to do things wrong. But it's not a specific amount of time. It's whatever is right for you, and you'll find that. And whenever it's right for you, I would say maybe not driving in your car. Maybe not.
Don't close your eyes and visualize while you're driving in your car, please.
Not appropriate. No, no, no.
Okay, so we don't make the Olympics.
Yep.
We've got the next cycle coming, right? So you've got 4 years, and describe at that time, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but you're not getting paid to be an Olympic athlete, right? This is still, we're in the amateur world at this time. Is this wrong? No.
You are yes, and let me clear this up for everybody who is wondering about amateur status for Olympians.
Please do.
That died in 1992.
Okay.
The reason that it did is because if you look back, we had the dream team. So you cannot have my dear friend Charles Barkley making whatever he was making, Michael Jordan making gajillions of dollars, and then you have Amy Van Dyken not able to survive.
So that was the break. That was the time. So you entered in. So you were able to be a swimmer full time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was my job. I lived at the training center. I woke up. I swam. I had breakfast. I recovered. I went to the weight room. I swam. I ate dinner. I went to sleep. That was my life.
And so that's a 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
So you get done. How long? Kind of get into that peak performance, right? You know that the Olympics are coming. How was that 4-year period for you of, you know, you got races and meets in between, but there's the one out there. What was that like with the patience level that takes, the amount of, I would imagine, anxiety that starts to come in, like, this is way out there. Can this please hurry? What was that feeling like? How did you manage that?
Yeah, it's a scary feeling. It really is, because I went into that quadrennium, as we call it, on top of the world. And I had gone to a world championships, broke the American record. So now I'm the top women's 50 freestyler in the country. And I had actually gone a long stretch, few years without being beaten. But still, the anxiety was real because it is 4 years and I'm getting older now. And there are kids that are coming up out of nowhere. I did it to other people that could just blow you out of the water and ruin your dream. So there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of nervousness. I am not a patient person. So those 4 years really taught me a lot about myself. They really, really did. And there were a lot of growing pains. My coach and I laugh about it to this day. Thank God we can laugh about it. But it was pretty tough. And I will be flat out honest with you, you know, because here it is. I've given up everything. I've given up my college education, everything to make this work. And then I started having self-doubts a little bit, like, what if it doesn't? What if I've done all of this and I don't make the team? And it was a pretty good possibility that could happen. I mean, the American sprinters are out of this world.
We're pretty good.
They're pretty darn good. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, though, I learned a lot about myself. And I think that it's made me the person that I am today. And we had growing pains, but you know what? It's okay. I mean, I had people around me that are still in my life from that moment, you know, from that point in time, which I'm thankful for, because if I were those people, I would have run.
So you get there. You're there. It happens, and you go 4 gold medals that year, correct?
Yeah.
What is winning one is amazing. Dominating like that has to be somewhat, even though you believe in yourself and all the things, right? It still has to be a surreal feeling at the end of that, being like, holy shit, what did I just do? I just won 4 gold medals. How did that kind of describe that emotion and that feeling of that accomplishment that you went through?
Well, let me tell you about these games. This was, and I love it when people are like, "Oh, you were an Olympian. It was so easy once you got to the Olympics." Let me tell you stories. So,
I love stories. Let's story time with Amy Van Dyken. Here we go.
good. I got it. Let's go. Here it goes. Buckle up, Buttercup. So I had gotten to the games, right? At first games, I mean, you're getting all the USA stuff, and they bring you into this warehouse, and you've got a grocery cart, which people start throwing things into. I mean, everything that you can imagine, just throwing them in the shoes, hats, blah, blah, blah. And you get through it, and it's still so surreal. Well, my first race, I went out, it was 100 freestyle. It was my worst race. I won a best time, but I got 4th place. And I always had leg cramps. It was just kind of a thing that I did. So I was having leg cramps, collapsed on the deck. It was a to-do. It was a Van Dyken moment, which is drama. So get back to the room, and this is things that people don't realize happen. And the head coach at the time was there, and he said, "Yeah, you're done. You're not swimming anymore." Well, his swimmer would have been the person that would have taken my spot, which is, so it is political.
Yeah.
I went on and I was like, I think I can do this. Let me do this. I heard my coach and that coach yelling, and another coach yelling in the hallway as I was trying to sleep about me being able to compete. So you talk about visualization that night.
Yeah.
I'm like, here we go, giddy up. So next day was a relay. I had to swim the same thing that I collapsed the night before in. And I knew these coaches didn't want me there. So not only did we win the gold medal and get a world record, I went the fastest split in history. Well, the day after that was 100 butterfly, and I hated the butterfly. It was stupid. Still is stupid. Didn't know how I made it. And I barely made the Olympic team, right? And I started thinking to myself, well, if I got an individual medal, you know what that would do to that coach?
Yeah.
It'd really stick it in his schnoodle.
Just what you
right?
needed was a little bit more, right? A little bit more.
Just a little bit. Tick me off just a little
Yeah.
bit more. And I remember I hit the turn and I came off and I looked and I was in 4th place, right? So like one more spot and I would get a medal and it would prove my point. And I hit the wall and I turned around and I was like, that's a pretty good time. What the heck is that? And then they announced the gold medal goes to Amy Van Dyken, and you see the Wheaties box reaction, right? I'm going to tell you, children and parents, practice the celebration face, right? Because for years I'm signing this thing like, no, would have been cuter if so,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what all this meant. So after the 100 butterfly, I had another relay, 3rd gold medal. Now it's the 50 free. My coach, John T. Skinner, was not letting me talk to anybody, which was normal for us. And then I won, and I didn't realize what it meant. There were a bunch of people with 4 ever gold Amy. I didn't know. I got out of the pool. John T. was crying. I'm like, what the heck is happening? Did an interview, and that's where I found out that I broke this record. Because the guy was like, "Hey, how did it feel to break the record?" And my time broke the Olympic record, so I had assumed we were wrongly that's what we were talking about. And he goes, "No, you're the first American woman to win 4 gold medals in a single sport, whatever." And I looked in the camera, and you know me well enough now, you know this to be true. I looked dead in the camera back to my home state of Colorado, and I said, "Shut up!" Did not realize what it meant. I had no idea. Became the most decorated athlete, male or female, of those games. So my friend Michael Johnson with his gold shoes, I always make fun of him for that. But it became really something that even when I was at the Olympics, it was one of those things where people doubted me, and I'm like, "You doubting me? How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you?"
Yeah.
Went on to break history, and it's still never been broken. It's been tied, but it's not been broken. So that's why I'm so stoked for LA, because Simone Biles, I guess, just announced her retirement. I thought she was going to be on the road for that. But again, you got Katie Ledecky, who could do it. You've got Gretchen Walsh, who could do it. Let's talk about track and field athletes who could do it. So I want it done in 28, where I can be there and I can hug the woman who does it, because it's about darn time.
Well, I just think it's so. Well, first of all, I got goosebumps listening to your story there.
Thank you.
Second, I think it's so cool. This is something in athletics that I love so much. you care about the legacy, right? You want someone to do what you did, and it would be hard to have someone break your record, but there's going to be a pride in the fact that someone from your country, someone from your team, the USA Swimming, was able to do that. And you can hear it in your voice. It's not a that's where it's not petty, right? You're competing when you're in that moment, but you'll love it when somebody is able to do that, if they're able to do it. It's quite an accomplishment. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd love to hear that whole legacy feeling in your voice.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, listen, if someone would have done it in 2000, oh, hell no, I would not have been happy. I'm totally kidding. But yeah, I mean, you have to realize that when you break a record, you broke someone else's record, and that's why they're there. They're there to be broken, and that's why I always want to be like the first person there to like say congratulations. And I know back in the day, someone broke my American record and I left a voicemail. This is old voicemail on the coach's in his office. And I asked years later, I was like, yeah, when I talked to you about Maritza, and he was like, I never got that message. That's why I want to be there in person.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
there's nothing that can get in the way, no technology. So yeah, but I do think it's important for people to realize that you did break someone else's record, and it is there to be broken again, and it will be broken again.
Well, and you know what it took to do that. And if somebody else is able to do that, that's a really small club, right? That's one of the smallest clubs in the world. What it would take to be able to do that.
Yeah, it would be really, really special. I mean, I think that's, not to compare it to this at all, because whatever, but it is the female side. When Michael broke Mark's record, like that was just, and everyone went around and said, it's never going to be done again. It can never be done again. It can never, but that's what we said when Mark did it.
Yeah.
So, as much as we can say, winning 5 golds in 1 Olympics for a female athlete would be difficult. Yeah, it would, but it's not unheard of.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got a ways to go, but somebody right now is out there working their, off, trying to make that happen, which is also pretty cool. To be the standard, that's got to be pretty cool.
All these years later, are you kidding me? They're like, pull out the dusty books and let's see who this woman is.
So next Olympics, you 2 gold medals, correct? At the next Olympics, is that correct? So 6 total, and then you anything special about that one that that obviously gold medals are special, but anything about that Olympics that no one knows about, or a story that similar to the one that you just told?
Nothing that dramatic for me, because I think the coaches had figured out, don't do that to her, she'll just win. But the 2000 Olympics were special for me in several ways. I had 2 shoulder surgeries that were supposed to end my career, and the first one took 18 months to recover from. Got right back in the water, ripped it up again, had to have it redone 6 months to the day of Olympic trials in 2000. So I wasn't supposed to be there. So the fact that I got to swim 2 relays in the 50 free was absolutely amazing. Now, we were in Australia, and something that Australians pride themselves on is that they are swimming aficionados. Like, we landed in Sydney and you would have thought that it was like Michael Jordan and all the dream team. No, it was a swim team. So they really know their stuff. And I had my best friend there wearing my husband's jersey because he played for Denver and he was in training camp, couldn't come. So he was there, in spirit. And it was my last race. She knew this, I knew this. And I got out of the pool and the applause just went crazy. And people started standing up because they knew it was it.
Yeah.
And I stood there, and NBC said, you got to get off. And I'm like, no, give me a minute. Because the next time I hear this, it will not be for me. It's going to be for somebody else. And right now it's for me. So I stood there. Everybody sat down. My best friend stood up. Now, a thing that I used to say when my husband would be out playing, I'd be like, kick him in the ding ding. Why? I don't know. It was a thing. So she stood up, and in front of the crowd, she yelled, you kicked him in the ding ding. And that was it. I knew my career was done.
What a way to go out.
It was awesome, man. I'll tell you what.
How old were you?
I was 27.
Okay. So this is where I want to go next with this, right? So you're 27 years old, one of the most accomplished American athletes of all time, best in your sport, like all the things. How much was your identity tied up in being Amy Van Dyken, the swimmer, versus being Amy Van Dyken? And was that something hard for you when you knew you were retiring, going on to the next phase? Or how did that impact you? And do you have advice for people when they're getting to the end of their career? What do you do next?
I hope that's not too annoying back there.
No,
I'm so
I love it.
sorry.
I
That's
love it.
terrible. Oh God. So I don't know that my identity was really tied up in it. I think I thought at the time that it wasn't, but I think that it was more than I thought. And so when you come to the end of something and that's all you've been known for, yeah, it can be really hard. But I jumped straight into another career. I had gone to college to teach high school biology to deaf students.
Mm,
I am now in the media.
yeah.
I don't know how that all happened. But yeah, I jumped right into it and I started a new career. And I really think that that's what helped me get through those times where it was like, nobody cares about swimming. Nobody cares about the Olympics. Everyone's focused right now, on hockey or, basketball, or we're starting the football season or whatever it was. Um, so it is hard. It really is when it's gone and no one's paying attention and you're like, but I just did this thing that like
Yeah.
was really hard. And
Yeah.
so it can be hard when you go places and, you know, people don't recognize you or whatever, and you assume they should. But, at the end of the day, we're all so into our own lives that it doesn't matter. And I started to realize that it's not who I am. The 6 gold medals is not who I am. It's what I did.
Yeah.
My dad was an engineer, but that's not who he was. It's what he did. So
Right.
when I started separating those two things, I started really, I guess it started to be a little bit easier. Again, it's not always that easy for people to process that. It can be really super hard, but I do feel that me jumping right into another career that I had no idea what I was doing, I think that really helped me get through it.
Yeah, it's good advice because it comes to an end for somebody. Some people comes to the end at the end of high school. There's an end of college. There's the end of pros, Olympics. There's an end somewhere, and figuring out how to transition from what you were doing into the next thing is something that should be thought about as you're approaching that end. I know it's hard to think about, but it's something that should be thought about.
It should be. And you think about, I go back to, I was sitting there in the room when John Elway retired. He had another 2, 3 good years in him. Absolutely, he did. I don't think that's debatable at all.
Yeah.
But he went out on top. And I'm going to tell people that does not happen. It does not happen to a lot of athletes. It didn't happen to my husband. Thankfully, it did happen to me. Happens to fewer people than you want to believe. So you will go out when it's not your time, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
You have to be mentally ready, because you don't want to be that guy that's at the party that always talks about how his freshman year he was the greatest quarterback on the freshman team. Like we all know that person, right? And you
Yeah.
don't want, and God love him.
Yeah.
Continue your story, sir or ma'am. But also you don't want to be that person, and you want
Yeah.
it to end in a way that you wanted it to. So, even if it doesn't end the way that you want it to, you can still pull things out of it that were amazing. And so you did end it the way that you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you didn't go out being a jerk and,
Yeah.
to everybody.
Yeah. So you go from into the media, you do all sorts of like amazing things, right? You've broken a ton of barriers in your life, did radio, television, a whole bunch of stuff. What was your favorite part of that period of time up to 2014? What was that kind of that period of time that you enjoyed the most?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I loved morning radio just because I could be goofy and be myself.
Yeah.
And people, you have like a relationship with people. They're listening to you in the shower. They're vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to, you know what? It's so weird. Working with Rob Dibble was my favorite time. I was the only female voice on Fox Sports Radio that was on a show.
Yeah.
We had Deb Carson, who's still there, doing her updates, but I was the only one that had a show. And I will tell you what, Rob Dibble, you can say whatever you want to about his career. He is one amazing man.
Yeah.
And we had so much fun together. Our producers, our call screeners, everybody. I knew when I went into work that we were going to have a riot. Rob and I might fight, but that was fun. Kind of. Sometimes kind of. But also we knew that, like, hey, at the end of the day, we're all ordering pizza. We're having red wine Friday. Like, we are having a riot. We're talking sports, man. And that was the best time in my life, I really feel.
Yeah.
I feel like I was coming into my own at that time, kind of figuring out who I was outside of sport and feeling comfortable with it. I broke a couple stories. I remember one time I was in the kitchen making some food and I was watching entertainment TV or whatever. And they were like, and last night on Fox Sports Radio, Amy Van Dyken was talking about Lolo Jones knocking out her teammate in the bobsled. And I'm like, it happened. It did. I got 3 sources told me. But it was crazy. And it was just amazing. And I'm blessed that I had that time with him and with that time on the radio, with the time with our listeners and callers. Our last caller of the night was always Nurse Nancy from Michigan. She was a prison nurse and she'd call every night. We're like, what are you smoking on today? Palm balls. She was just hilarious. Like, I still remember our people. We had the people under the stairs that would watch us on the stream, but we couldn't see them. And they were cuckoo. They made shirts for themselves. I'm like, this is nuts. Loved it.
So, 2014, ATV accident in the hospital. When did you find out that you were paralyzed? What was that? Did you know it or did somebody tell you? And sort of I can't even imagine what that being, your energy for life is contagious even through a screen, right? The what you've accomplished is remarkable in athletics, and all of a sudden someone tells you like this that something is different about you in your life. What was that like, and how did you get through that period of time? And or did you get through it? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, that was pretty intense. So it was trauma. And I died several times in the accident, which is why I have this. It's a phoenix rising from the ashes. And underneath there's last time my heart rate went wonky. And then that's when it went to normal sinus rhythm. So I can look at it and be like, listen, whatever's happening, it's been worse. So I knew it was a trauma. I woke up that night. I think Tom hadn't been there yet because we were 4 hours away when I got injured. And we had some neighbors that were there. And I knew that was bad. Like if you get Jerry out of bed at that time, it's not good. I never had to be told I was paralyzed. I knew, I couldn't lift my head up past, I couldn't do a sit up. I couldn't do anything. And I remember right before I went into surgery, my doctor was like, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of there. The problem is when I dislocated, this vertebrae was, if you take a hair off your head or your neighbor's head in your case.
Yeah, because I don't have any hair. Yeah.
Not a hair.
Thanks for pointing that out.
And you split it. Sorry, I had to point it out. And you split that hair in half. That's how close I was to my aorta. So when my husband found me, I was face down. He could see my back was broken. Like I went over a 6-foot cliff, hit a tree in the middle of the air, all the things. And I think now that I think back, I was on drugs, big drugs, obviously. And I went into surgery and he had said, I'm trying to get you out, but I don't know if I can. So you have to say goodbye to your husband. And to have to do that, but it was very matter of fact. But then he really ticked me off when he was like, if this is too much, you can let go. I'm like, don't challenge me, dude. Just don't do it. So we went into the operating room and I remember it was very quiet and I had had surgeries before. It was loud and everyone's singing and dancing, the music, silent. Everyone was moving methodically. Everyone had waiters. There were 4 people along the side wall and they all had igloo coolers. And I remember I looked over at him. I was like, oh my God, it's a party, BYOB. Thank God I made it out. Can you imagine? Doctor, what were her last words? He'd probably be like, that's my girl. But, and then 9 hours later, I came out of surgery. Things that happened in the surgery and we're fine. And coming out, no one had to tell me I was paralyzed.
You knew.
I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. Yeah, I was scared. There are things that happen when you're paralyzed. I'm not going to be grabbed. Belly button down. Think what's below there. None of it works anymore. So you wonder, how am I going to be a normal human being in society? Yeah. Am I going to have to wear a diaper? Like, these are things you think about.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We have things. Anyway. But yeah, these are the things that I started thinking about, right? Like the angel princess. I don't want to be dirty. Ooh. But when I got out of ICU, it was, I think, almost 3 weeks later, got out of ICU and they put me in a wheelchair to get me up to the main room. And I remember I was comfortable in the wheelchair, like, which is weird. They're not comfortable at all. The wheelchairs are horribly uncomfortable. But there was something about it that I knew life had changed. I knew that I was given a platform for a reason. And this was my reason.
Yeah.
This is why everything else happened in my life, because the things that I go through every day and the things that I see every day happen to my friends, there needs to be someone with a voice that speaks out. And there we go. My 34th career has started
Yeah.
as an influencer.
Well, I just, it's just amazing to me to hear kind of all of the things that you've done, right? Like, and all of a sudden you can't walk,
Mhm.
and your whole life people told you couldn't do anything, or do certain things, and then you proved them wrong, right? I'm sure in your mind there's maybe still to this day, I'm going to prove these people wrong, that I'm going to get out of this chair and I'm going to walk. When you're not able to do that, do you draw from your career from that, or is there just this? You have this. I don't know you personally. I've not met you in person, but you have an energy about you that is uncommon amongst people that I've met. And where do you draw that from? Where does it come from?
I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
The amount of times that I had passed away in that accident, I'm not supposed to be here. And someone, maybe both people, did not want me. So get your life together. And I think about it. This is a tragic accident. I do not wish it on anybody, for sure. It has taught me so much. It has given me such a lease on life. And I realize that even when I'm having a bad day, at least I'm having that day. And
Yeah.
that day is not guaranteed. And I think that there was something that when I came out of that accident that people notice is very different. I just want to live every day to the fullest. I want to be that person that if you're having a bad day and you have an encounter with me when I'm having a bad day, I can at least make you smile.
Yeah.
That's my whole goal in life. And I don't know where it comes from. I have no
You should
idea.
bottle it.
Well, you're so cute. You're very sweet. I just listen. I'm so lucky to have done what I have done, to have accomplished what I accomplished, to be able to meet the people that I've been able to meet. I mean, I took a selfie with Tim Cook from Apple last week. Like, who gets to do these things? I'm so fortunate, and if I can spread that fortune to everybody that I come in contact with, my day is fulfilled. That's how I go about it. And even when I'm having a bad day, I try not to let it affect other people. In the past, I would let it affect
Yeah.
everybody. My teammates are going, yes. But but now I try to be the opposite, because I realize that life is very, very short, very
And
short.
and every day above ground is a good day.
Preach it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a foundation, correct? Is it what is your foundation work?
So I did have a foundation. I
You did.
bankrupted us during the Panorama. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we did was, I've got I would love to get it back up and running. So I'll discuss it really quickly.
Okay.
Um, the wheelchairs that you see a lot of paras and quads in are custom made. But insurance, well, they barely allow us to get custom made chairs, but they will not allow a child. So children end up with pressure sores, elbow, shoulder injuries because the chair doesn't fit, and then that causes all sorts. So we did the custom wheelchairs for kids. And I remember one girl, I didn't hear back from mom for months, and I'm like, what is going on? Well, she can't figure out the color. She wants sparkles sometimes, then not sparkles. She wants pink and then purple. We did a half pink, half purple sparkly wheelchair for her. So there we go. She got everything she wanted.
Perfect.
But that's how I bankrupted us. We didn't have the money, the means to make money back then, as we all remember. And but we did have the means to spend the money, and there were still kids that were injured that needed
Yeah.
stuff. So I bankrupted it. But yeah, hopefully Amy's Army will get up and running again.
Yeah, that would be great. We should have that discussion at a different time about how to get that going again. So I can't tell you how grateful I am that you took the time to do this. Anything that I missed that we should talk about? The time is so short. I literally could hang out with you and talk to you for hours. What is the what did I miss? What else should we know?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think I've had so many different lives within my life. I went from an asthmatic weakling to the best Olympic female swimmer that there was at the time. I married a football player, so then I became a football wife. You see me a football wife. It was glorious. I was seriously like Kelsey Brothers' wife. I'm drawing blanks right now. Jason Kelsey's wife
Yeah.
back in the day. So I
Yeah.
love her very much. Did that. Then I went on to my media career. Listen, I've had a full life. And if I could give advice to anybody about anything, is don't say no. Don't say no. Like, if someone offers you something and you think that it's interesting, don't say no.
Yeah.
Do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, you fail and you go back to doing what you were doing before. But like, if it works out and you get to do something that you love forever, it's glorious. It's magical.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next question, was to go back in time. And
Oh,
we talked about, I do this on every show, go back in
okay.
time to 14-year-old or whatever age you want to take yourself to,
Oof.
and build a reverse crystal ball for yourself. Would that be the advice you give yourself if you could go back and talk to young Amy and say, don't say no to anything? Or is there a different piece of advice that you would give yourself, knowing everything that you've been through, to kind of help you along the way?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. You're gonna make me cry. Yeah, the advice I would give to little Amy is like, you're okay.
Mm.
You don't need to prove to everybody that you're okay. You are okay. And you're different and you think differently and you act differently and you're okay. Just be yourself, but always have your goals in mind, you know? But not everybody's out to get you. People like you. You're okay.
How long
Calm
did that
down.
take you to learn?
Let's see, I'm now 25, so no, it's taken a while to learn that, and I think a lot of kids that have the problems that I had, with learning disabilities and either ADE or me ADHD, I think that we're made to feel like we're weird, because we think differently and sometimes we act out and we squirrel all the time. I've done it in this interview a few times and
Yeah.
had to ask you what we were talking about. But you know what? I think once you become comfortable in your own skin and you realize that everybody is different, not everybody is the same, and being different is beautiful. It really is. I value the differences in people, and I hope that they value it in me. And so that's how I've kind of gone on in life. And I think it took until after the accident to realize that. I think I masked my true self for a long time. And now here we go. Everybody hold on. Well, fasten your seatbelts. It's
Buckle
going to
up.
be a bumpy ride.
I love it. So I want to kind of piggyback on what you said, because there are so many kids out there that have ADHD, dyslexia, learning disability, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And coaches oftentimes, either parents don't put them in sports because they're afraid of how they're going to be treated, or
Yeah.
coaches don't know how to coach those kids. And if someone would have done that to you and said, you know what, you're too much, we can't,
Yeah.
you get out of here, the story wouldn't be what it would be, and who knows where you would have made it somehow, some way. But the lesson is that just because somebody has something like that doesn't mean they don't have a meaningful career ahead of them, a meaningful trajectory, whatever that is, whether it's science or athletics. Figure out how to teach each kid in the space that they know how to learn.
Yes, but see, here's the problem with that is that takes time. And
Yes.
sometimes we get these coaches, as you know, who are teaching all day long. They're burnt out. Now they're coaching the same kids. They're burnt out. So I also think that it should be like the kids within the group and the parents that also kind of help a little bit. But listen, let kids be themselves. So what if you got someone who's talking over your instructions? Guess what? They probably know the instructions better than you, and they're just tired because you're taking too long to talk about it.
That's
So
right.
hurry up, let's
Talk
go.
less. Talk
That's
less, do
right.
more.
That's right.
Yes.
So you know what? If you've got someone who's disruptive like me, you know what? I just give them a chance and ask them why they're being so disruptive. Maybe you're boring them to death, and maybe you can spice it up a little bit. Who knows? But just ask. That's the thing that we don't have in this world anymore. We don't have conversations. So we don't
Yeah.
get to learn about other people. Just have a conversation with a kid. A kid is a person that's just shorter than you. It's fine. They're not scary. They're okay. And
Yeah.
and they will tell you more about themselves than you could have ever guessed. So just have that conversation is what I would say to a coach.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we're actually going to do an episode on this, on how to interact with kids and of all different sort of backgrounds and learning abilities, and why that's so important. Because the idea that someone like you, or with the learning disabilities that you had, could get left behind is
Mhm.
just sad. Like, it's sad, right? Like the fact that if you wouldn't been in the right place and your parents hadn't done the right things with you, and the coaches hadn't embraced you in the way that they did, you wouldn't have gotten to where you are. And how many more kids out there get left behind because of that?
Oh, I'm gonna guess it's a ton. It's
Yeah.
a ton, and it really is too bad because we're missing out on a lot of talent, not just on the sports field, but just in life, like
Yeah.
computer science, all the things.
Yeah.
So yeah, give them a chance. And I do think when we get older, we kind of think kids, oh, kids, or you get afraid of them, right? You're like, oh God, there's a gang of kids. Ah, They're like you were back in, when we went to the mall and went to Orange Julius and Sbarro Pizza.
Yeah,
I'm aging
Sbarro pizza. I
myself.
love Sbarro pizza.
I'm aging myself. Have you seen the thing where they're like, we need to turn old malls into retirement communities for Gen X? And I'm like, yes, do it.
Yes,
Put the
I'm
arcade
in.
in. Let's go. Oh,
Uh,
sugar. Anyway, I digress.
so last thing today before I let you go is we make everybody tell a dad joke. So I'm anxiously awaiting your PG-13 dad joke for me here.
All right. Why do you never hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom?
Why do you never hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom? I don't know.
Because the P is silent.
That's so good. I was going to say because there aren't any left, because they're extinct, but
Also,
the P being silent is so much better.
thanks. I love dad jokes. I'm glad you
Oh,
asked
they're
that.
so good. Well, Amy Van Dyken, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Our listeners are going to love this show. We appreciate you doing this and look forward to. My goal in life now, one of them is to meet you in person. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. I loved it, and continued success.
Thank you very much. Anthony Leverett's back here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and just had the pleasure of interviewing, having a conversation with Amy Van Dyken. She did a remarkable job, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation. So many things to pick from for the recap today, but one that we hadn't talked about a lot, and maybe at all so far in this series, is her use of visualization. And I think we hear about visualization a lot, but she really did a great job of drilling down into it. For her, being really, really immersing herself in that future moment was what I thought was so great in her description of what she did. And I think if you translate that into other sports, right? I'm watching my son run track right now. Being able to put yourself in the blocks, feel the track with your hand, feel the temperature outside. Is it raining on me? Is it hot outside? Is there crowd noise? Is what's going on around me? And trying to get that feeling as you're visualizing that in what you're doing. And then not just visualizing yourself doing things well, visualize not doing it right first, and then end with that visualization of getting it right. And I think her deal was she wanted to swim at 21.7 second 50. And whatever sport you're in, but back to that track analogy, run that 100 meters in your mind and do it poorly, then run it and do everything right. That is going to go a long way in your performance. And this translates into every sport that a kid can play. Shooting a basketball, throwing a football, catching a football, running a route, being an offensive tackle, soccer, scoring a goal, making a great pass, taking the ball away from the person dribbling at you, whatever that is. But I think the really important part is getting into that moment and the feeling around that moment, not just doing it, but what does it feel like? What's the temperature? Where am I? What's the crowd noise? And really engage in that and do it on a regular basis as part of your training when your mind is quiet. And that's different for other people. Amy did it before she went to bed because that was the only time she could be quiet with her mind. But if for wherever you are, whenever that quiet time for your mind is, try to do it at that time. And then I'm going to get back to this today, being a multi-sport athlete. Here's one of the most decorated athletes of her time in the history of her sport, talking about the fact that she specialized pretty early and wishes that she hadn't, and preaches to everybody else not to. And there's multiple reasons behind it. There's injury prevention, there is wear and tear, there's burnout. And back to that, the thing that we talk about a lot is that ability to learn how to fail and get back up and do it again. Don't specialize at a young age. And then I want to drill back down into the training component for young athletes here, of that multi-sport athlete or the person that is going to specialize. Find good coaches. Do your research. Find someone really, really good that knows what they're doing before you give your kid to them, to make sure that they're being trained the right way. And then cross-train for as long as you can before you begin that specialization. Again, had a great time with Amy. Really appreciate her coming on. You can find Jason and I, Next Pitch Media, on all the social platforms. Would love to have you engage, reach out, say hello, let us know that you're listening. And until next time, have a great day.